Ms. Kayla, what's for breakfast?
Hash browns.
Hmm. I just woke up minutes ago, so I have to take my indomethacin.
I went to sleep shortly after we talked. It was great.
Good.
But I didn't go hiking. I just walked in the farm fields.
I didn't add to your stress.
No, why would you?
Just glad I didn't.
Um, I forgot to ask you last night though about the post, the Facebook post we were going to talk about.
Oh, yes, we can do that later.
Yeah, sounds
Unless
good.
people want to do it in session. I actually, again, have a proposal, but I'm very flexible for today. Jaswinder has joined us.
Hi, Jaswinder. I'm going
And
to invite
Colin.
my coworker.
Hey, Colin.
Hi, Colin.
Hi, how you doing, guys?
Hey, for some reason, your microphone seems really good today.
Yeah, I have the curse of the microphone. Good as sounding better.
Is mine coming through okay? Testing,
Yes.
testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Yep, sometimes it's low, but it's good today.
I think it's low when I allow Zoom to automatically adjust the microphone sensitivity. But if I set it up high, then it seems to be more acceptable to you guys. Like if I talk low like this, can you still hear me and understand me? I guess not. Did that come through?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I can use this low, sexy voice then. Okay. I'll say things slowly and lowly, and we'll see whether they have some impact.
Slow and low.
Okay. As always, I have a proposal for how we conduct a conversation today. It's a topic of keen interest to myself, but as always, I remain very flexible to see what people want to talk about. Alex is here. Anybody want to begin a round of optional check-ins? Hey, Alex. Or shall I dive right into my proposal?
Quick.
That's a cough.
Who proposed the round of check-ins?
I'll check in.
Okay.
As some of you may know, I'm buying a house. I'm really excited to get out of economic servitude, and things are going in the up and up. I'm checking my balance right now because I'm finally, after 8 months, getting refunds for my airline tickets from, when I was supposed to teach workshops abroad. So that's another good, financial gain. And my kids are getting great grades. It's still work though. And yeah, so just busy. I don't know how I do it, but it's good to be here with everyone.
Welcome, welcome.
My mic open.
Yes.
Okay, my check-in. I'm here. I'm reasonably complimentous. Looking forward to our discussion today. Complete.
What was that word you used? Complimentous?
Reasonably complimentous. No, reasonably collected.
I've not heard that word before. Okay. Anyone else?
Everything's all right here in Australia. I've got to get sandbags prepared for the
storm surge. We get a storm surge if there's a cyclone. So sandbags are on the agenda, and that's about it here. In the politics is going crazy because politicians are corrupt, and it's pretty obvious in the media, mainstream media. Whistleblowers are starting to speak up, so that's good. That's a good sign.
Okay, thanks, Alex. I'll go. And Colin, if you'd like, I can always assume that you would prefer not to check in unless you actually opt in actively, okay? Because I believe that's my understanding of your past habits, okay?
Yeah, that's pretty astute.
Okay, I'll check in. This week we had a very minor, it was the shortest 3-minute power outage that we've experienced since I've been here. So what turned out could have been a catastrophe, actually was not, but it happened 3 minutes before I was supposed to get onto a webinar delivering a topic to 350 people. So that was rather high stress for about 3 or 4 minutes. Was trying to join them on my phone, but eventually the internet came back along with all the building power. So I got everything settled back into shape, ready to present 9 seconds approximately before I was supposed to go live. So I don't ever recommend doing webinars that way, but it happened this time. Other than that, let's see, Ronnie got one of her college applications done. Maybe that was over a week ago. So she's got one more to do, and we'll be doing that this weekend. And I have a possible topic/mapping exercise to do today after the round of check-ins. Over. Okay, so unless Colin wants to go, I think we're done with the round of check-ins for those of us who are here. Okay. Let me see if there's any topics that are hot on people's minds that could be in this realm of barn raising or foundation laying. And I will include myself as one of those proposed topics. Anyone else? I'll give you guys a few seconds here to collect your thoughts or to find your thoughts.
Do we have a proposal about what we were going to focus on with the agreements last weekend?
We actually do. I did write it up, and I did not, or it could be just my senses. It could be that I'm just not aware of any objections, but I haven't heard any significant material objections. Does anyone know of any significant material objections to the proposal? And did you all see the write-up that I put on? It is, I think, in one of the documents associated with the session, and it's also in Google Docs. So it's in a couple of places already. If you like, I can share a screen to that once I find it. But is anybody here not seen it? Really? Everybody's not seen it? Holy smokes. All right, let me back up a little bit.
I'm glad you think me and Jazz are everybody.
You are everybody. You are the world to me, okay? So come on here. Let me go to, this is going to be a necessary prerequisite then to the topic that I had in mind, because I just assumed everybody had seen it. So let me bring it up. Okay, does anybody remember which particular day it was we discussed? It was like 2 weeks ago, right? So it would have been November 1. All right. So let me, sorry, I was not prepared for this, so I don't have it right at my fingertips. So I'm gonna have to be searching slightly. But if anybody has that link, I will bring it up. Now, Google Drive search is not the greatest. So let me, oh, here we go. If I go into recent, here it is, how to make agreements. December 5th, I wrote it up. Oh, right, December, okay. All right, here's the link. Let me share my screen here, okay. I was gonna share my screen anyway, but let me start here. Alrighty, let me, sorry for vamping here. I am going to share my screen now. Ay, 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 oh, I'm sharing my screen. Now I'm gonna let somebody else in. Oh, Manny, I'm glad you acted on that. That's why I make you guys co-host.
Hello.
All right, so let me share my screen. Hey, sorry, before I share my screen, Manny, thanks for joining us. We just completed a round of check-ins. Check-ins, if you're familiar with the concept on Zoom, is basically not a discussion of topics, but a way to get yourself centered, focused, present, attentive, curious, listening, generous, blah, blah, blah. Basically, prepared to have a conversation. So the 4 or 5 of us have already had a round of check-ins, but if you'd like, tell us about what's going on with yourself and how you're feeling, whether you're ready to listen, whether you're ready to argue, any of that stuff, before I share my screen, which is what I was about to do. Also, check-ins are optional. You do not have to do it. It's just opt-in practice. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it.
Hi, good morning. Manny here. Thanks for having me again. Just another Saturday. Looking to learn a lot from you guys. Get some input, some output, and yeah, show me how to heal and how to make a difference in planet Earth. It's my main goal in life. So, well, there's more to that, but yeah, that'll be awesome. Thanks for having me once again.
All right, cool. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for checking in. All right, so a little bit of background. About 2 weeks ago, probably on or about or before December 5th, after 3 years of conversation, we finally got to a proposal, which I'm about to share right now. Okay, so let me share this. Okay, can you see my screen now? Hello?
How to make agreements decisions.
All right, good, thank you.
I see it.
All right, so this is a multi-page document, but this is the TLDR version. You guys know what TLDR means? Anybody raise your hand if you don't? Okay, for
Don't know.
long documents, some people say too long, didn't read. Okay, so they say, I'm just not going to read something that's that long. So what's known as a very small abstract or summary sometimes now is referred to as a TLDR. In other words, here it is without all the gory details underneath it. And here's the proposal. After 3 years, because we don't have clear membership, because we don't have clear other commitments, here is the practice that we're abiding by at the moment. Anybody may create a proposal representing any recommended decision or a change to a decision or a practice or a change to a practice, okay? Anybody can circulate such a proposal to quote unquote the community, and they define pretty much what the community is by how far they broadcast this proposal. Then you basically let conversation and pros and cons, debate, if you like, go on and on until it's kind of like settled down, okay? So in other words, until everything has kind of been said, you kind of worked out all the, kinks in the agreement, there's been revisions to the agreement, and it's, available for everybody to review, and it's been available for review for N days, where N is maybe like 1 or 2 or 6 or whatever, or 50, depending on what the community kind of feels is appropriate, okay? We're assuming that in that discussion period, revisions and modifications and improvements are being made to the proposal, so that that's what allows the stability of this N days, okay? And in this particular case, my N was 6 days. I just wanted to make it about a week, okay? And just for the record, for that week, I didn't hear any material objections to this, okay? So we can then, as the community, those people who participated in this conversation about a proposal or decision or action, can basically treat this as an adopted decision or action or artifact, okay? So that's basically it. It's very simple. And it took us 3 years to get here, okay? Which is why I'm going to share another, oh, wait, so let me go back. So everybody who was in that previous discussion on either the 5th or the 4th, is this a fair characterization of it? Let me just allow a little bit of time here. And while you're thinking about it, I'm going to scroll down through the rest of this document so you can at least see that there's a few more details to this thing, okay? So page by page, I will.
It's interesting. There's more to it.
Just for the record, this was originally proposed on December 24th of 2017, so almost 3 years ago. So I wrote this up. You can read the details separately, but this is what I wrote up 3 years ago. Oh, so here's the revision log, okay? Interesting. So on the 28th of November, this is when I added the TLDR section, and then Glenn came in and added some remarks. Oh, so I have to review this. I haven't even reviewed that yet. Okay, so this is probably Glenn's stuff down here at the bottom. Anyway, so I think he left my TLDR section intact, and I'll have to go and see if there's any material differences. I might have to reopen this up again and not assume that it's been adopted. So here we go. Anyway, is this a characterization that you recall that I made in a discussion? Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. The thing is, the thing about people coming into the group in the future, today or in the future, is that they haven't agreed to any proposals or adopted any traditional practices that we've agreed upon because they're new. So that's an issue.
It definitely is an issue, and that is why I have my proposal for today. So thank you for that, Alex. You may also
when new people joining a organization have an induction program usually, but that means we become a cult, or does it? Not necessarily.
No, it does not. Not necessarily. Okay, depends on how we do so, in my opinion. Okay, so if that is an acceptable foundation, let me share a different thing right now, which is some thoughts that I've been collecting for discussion, okay? So moving on, I'm about to share something else. Okay, do you see a different screen here now? No?
Yes, agreements.
Okay, good. So let me start at the bottom.
Request for comment.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. So the bottom basically is recognizing, hey, we've had a lot of history and conversation. And through it all, we've had some disagreements, some misunderstandings, a lot of time has happened. But for some reason, those of us with the curiosity, the generosity to stick with it and live through these distractions and undesirable events, quote unquote, have managed to find ourselves here after 3 years appreciating the following. We've begun to appreciate focus. Distractions take us away from focus, but we believe, I think those of us who are here, that focus allows us to achieve some common understanding, accompanied with the willingness and the ability to listen, and the willingness to share language and work through these disagreements. And that's what has allowed us, in my opinion, to come at this agreement RFC. RFC basically means request for comment, by the way, okay? So now we have an agreement RFC, and it's almost adopted. We still have to study what Glenn put in there. But to me, it looks like it's the very first brick. It looks like we can actually think that we have out of these cauldron of hot conversations and a lot of this pounding through. We have a brick now, it appears, if it stands up. So if we have this brick, I'm going to do something else here, okay? I'm going to zoom out, and we're going to say, we want to get to a place where we understand how to manage or even avoid or eliminate conflict. Can you guys all read this in the upper right? Okay. So what I'm saying is we have one brick, and we'll probably need to stack a few more bricks here on this path towards how do we understand how to manage conflict. So the question in my mind is, what is this path? What bricks do we need? What additional RFCs, what additional agreements, decisions, actions, artifacts, websites, you know, festivals, congregations, threads of conversation do we need to have to get us a little bit of the way towards understanding how to manage conflict? Now, let me recognize right up front, there are many, many existent ways to manage conflict. There's nonviolent communication, there's love, there's nurturing, there's negotiations, there's all kinds of ways, okay? I believe that what we're about to do is possibly recreate some of that, but recreate some of that from the ground up without a lot of the assumptions that may have been built in to those existing methods. Now, it looks like some of those methods, after we're done with all of this discussion and all of this analysis, may have been completely properly constructed, but we weren't there for that construction. So what I'm trying to figure out is, can we explicate that? Can we make those steps explicit so that by the time we understand this, we have a very, very explicit set of things that are necessary, things that we've adopted, and each brick is built on other bricks so that we can feel that we've got a solid foundation. That's what I'd like, okay? Because some other assumptions, you know, they may be based on the fact that, oh, well, you know, I have all the time in the world to talk to you and maybe both of you work for me. That's a whole different kind of conflict management. There's another conflict kind of management which basically says, oh, well, we're going to go on long walks on the beach and, you know, we're going to go to bed together and we're going to snuggle together. That's another whole kind of different conflict management, okay? I don't believe those are available to us in this particular group right now. So we're trying to figure out what is necessary for us as autonomous individuals with agency, with freedom, with choice, but the willingness to work together. That's the foundation. That's the community I'm trying to reach and characterize. So I know I've been talking a lot. Let me settle down and see if this makes sense to anyone here, okay? Over. Feel free to
I'll
jump
jump
in.
in.
Okay, go ahead, Colin. I couldn't see you,
Yeah.
so I couldn't see you.
Yeah, no, I'm still doing some chores and things this morning, but this is very interesting. Yeah, this is where the where I guess you and I have a similar interest in this question, and I see adding some context depending on what's at hand, the conversation at hand. So I would start to at this point to make types of conversations that you could adapt to, and not to try to recreate or, you know, like you're saying, be influenced by the past as much as realize that there's people who want to have a conversation and learn more, and then there's some people who think they might know already and want to challenge things, and then you get a different level of people in a conversation when it's a varied group of participants. So it's kind of interesting if you can focus on the value somehow. And, you know, Heiner tries to do it with the Magic Round Table. I try to do it with making sure people are well adapted, I guess, to the conversation. And recently I've come up with an idea for just a general conversation like we're having right now. If it starts to get disruptive in any way, you could have hand signals or some kind of a symbol that we could each agree upon and recognize that this is not the behavior that we would like to exhibit, and we agree that it really doesn't get us anywheres. And I think we've been frustrated by that. I have been. So when you have when you have a group of people who are all, I guess the other extreme would be paid to sit there, listen, and do what they're asked. You know, you get people that can be even quite agreeable. You don't have to be, but that's my experience is as being within a group of people who are all working towards a type of solution. And that's why I really like the agile type of formats. But that doesn't mean that's the only kind of format that we may use to have ongoing conversations and do things. But yeah, to actually focus on what it is you're doing, I think an agilistic type of process can really help flush out, so you get the right people who are leaning in for the right reasons. So it's almost like, you know, the pod forms, or I have some other ideas about the proposals, but I like that you said RFC there, because that plays off of where we already were, and that's kind of how I understood we were doing things. I don't know if we should have a list to make sure people actually saw it, or if somebody should second the nomination for the proposal. I don't know if we need anything like that, just to make sure that it's not invisible. But yeah, I think a proposal to, as you're putting it forward, is good. And I like the map to form some memory, because and this is the way I like the map too, where the group forms it together, because otherwise it's hard for people to follow these cognitive boxes on the screen as it grows, especially. So I like this idea. Trello was a great idea as well. And now we're looking maybe at Zulip. So it'd be nice if we could get those on the board as proposals. So if we had an inbox, and also a stretch goal for a GCC owned Zoom account would be another proposal. And I think the last proposal I would have is a focus finding exercise where we can really lean into what the GCC means to each individual, so we can help them the best, because it's not the same for everybody and it can be confusing. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I'm more here for the clear conversations and ways to navigate thought trails and journeys towards what you're trying to do. So it's almost like you're a carpenter, but at the same time you make your own tools a bit, if you know what I mean. And I think, modelers and software developers, they think that way. So it can be confusing for other people too. So yeah, I think clarity in the context of what we're doing within, and the tools to support it. That's number one for me.
Let me add clarity here. This is actually a good one. So let me say copy that, put this somewhere. Let me drag it away from its current location and say, let me edit that to become clarity. In the meantime, let me welcome Heiner. Heiner, welcome. We did a round of check-ins and I reviewed the item we talked about 2 weeks ago, which was this agreements RFC. And I was proposing or hypothesizing that, suppose this agreement RFC is a first brick that we've created that allows us to build, walls, buildings, foundations, whatever, okay? And then we have this stretch goal, which people use the language here sometimes, of understanding how to manage conflict, okay? And that if we want to sort of figure that out, what is the path? What is the path to get us from first brick to a magnificent playground or cathedral or, home or whatever it is you want to call it, where we're all living happily and coexisting together, okay? So in the meantime, Alex identified that, hey, we have to figure out how to accommodate or inform or onboard newcomers. Manny may be a guinea pig in that respect, okay? And then Colin added possible new agreements around hand signals and recognizing behaviors we don't want. And we talked about context in that many methods have been proposed, and Heiner, you're aware of most of them actually, about how to manage conflict, but they all have hidden assumptions or hidden infrastructure behind them. And my point to this exercise was to try and get explicit, was try and explicate just that 3 years of history that we've had. Oh, by the way, you missed the little preamble about how much time it's taken. how many misunderstandings, how many disagreements, how many undesirable events, how many distractions, but we stuck with it with generosity and curiosity in order to appreciate some of the following: the establishment of common understanding via language, the ability to listen and the generosity to listen, the focus that we find adds to our conversations rather than to have distractions, and to achieve clarity, which I believe, and this is not complete in any way, those are all key elements, however, that allowed us to get to this first brick, which is the agreement RFC. And so, Heiner, I think I've, in my mind, brought you up to speed. Let me sit back and see if anybody else wants to bring Heiner up to speed with anything that I have left out. Or, Heiner, you are also welcome to make a check-in.
I guess it goes without saying that the nano agreements are not binding, or they're, unless they're stipulated as such by the participants involved.
Excellent point. Yes, I've been saying this so much that I forgot to include it. I don't actually refer to them as nano agreements. I refer to them as micro agreements, but we'll see what you mean by that and what the difference is. But yeah, none of this assumes any punitive or correctional power given to anyone. These are all recommendations that are individually adopted and embraced and practiced or rejected. So anybody is free to reject this, but as long as they do it in a transparent way, then the rest of us know and are forewarned. So for example, I mostly say, I'm not going to interrupt people during conversations. Yeah, so let's add this as one, right? So how to handle interruptions. But I actually know that some people don't hold quite so strongly to that agreement. So we don't yet have an RFC around interruptions, but I do know that I'm generally leaning towards not interrupting people, and other people are more leaning towards, hey, I'm free to interrupt anybody anytime I want. However, if I know this about that person, then I can be less surprised and better prepared to handle that. Whereas most people know this about me, so if I do interrupt, that's probably an indication to someone that, wow, Sam's actually, interrupting for a reason, even though he says he's not going to interrupt. This might be very, very important to Sam. That might flow through someone's mind if they see me interrupting someone. Okay, so that's how these RFCs and making them transparent and explicit can help with our communication, in my humble opinion. I've been doing a lot of talking again. Alex.
I would approach that situation by saying, I will try not to interrupt, but I can't make any promises because sometimes somebody says something that triggers you, right? Over.
So let's bring that up. What the hell is a promise? And what the hell is a trigger? And let's talk about behavior. Okay, so Heiner, you've been here for a few minutes now. I was curious to see if that was anywhere close to bringing you up to speed, or now having heard that, you are now departing because it's not of interest, or you're just busy with other things. But see how rich this is? I mean, just in a few minutes, after just putting this picture together, there are now a wealth of stuff that we could actually be working on. We could be working on triggers, promises, interruptions, hand signals, behaviors. We could be talking about context and understand how to characterize that even better. We could be talking more about this how-to for newcomers. There's a lot to do once we actually have some common understanding over.
Well, I got some things I've been repeating about interruptions, if you'd like to hear it. The different kinds of interruptions, the good and the bad.
I heard the four types, yes, that you talked about last week or before.
Yeah. One, the active listening ones, and then the manipulative, distractive ones. Some are tactics for good, some are tactics for bad, right? And if we could recognize the ones that we don't want to promote, and you could also, when you wanted to interrupt, I was thinking that it could be, a customary thing where, you put your finger up and the person who's talking understands you want to interrupt, and the person speaking, you just say, I have one more point to make, and then I'll pass it over to you for your challenge. Or, you might be able to negotiate that more than just having to force your way in, so that, the person can ease you into the conversation if they're in the middle of a 2-point statement where they've said the first statement and then somebody jumps in and they want to say the second part of the statement, which could clarify. Like, I didn't jump in when you called it agreements. I was thinking RFCs, right? But then when we got to the map, it was written right there. So I'm glad I didn't jump in, you see. So just ways to, hand signals like the U, the C, or whatever, we could talk about it. But I just think that there's ways that we could agree that to make the conversation more interactive without the interruptions being as destructive.
See, that's an interesting one for me. And sorry to interrupt, but I don't see any other hands up. Oh, sorry, Alex has got his hand up. Okay, Alex.
I wanted to mention the talking over, interrupting by jumping in and talking over somebody who's in the mid-sentence. That's a very rude type of violent interruption that should never be practiced by any civilized community. So I think waiting until there's a pause, if you've had your finger up, then your interruption can enter the conversation without speaking over somebody. Over.
Kayla. And then Jazz.
So I would like to adopt the finger. It seems kind of universal. Everybody's been, interrupting with their finger. And I would also like to add that, types of interruptions. I think we can all say that when it comes to interrupting somebody, you're always bogged down with your own thoughts, and you don't want to, you don't want to lose your thoughts. So I think that's why interruptions happen. And a good thing to be mindful of is perhaps, if you can harness your thoughts and say like, okay, well, I'm going to bank this and say it later. That's very difficult. But another thing to do is, for instance, newcomers, what we could do is we could always say, a good practice is maybe write your thoughts down, put your thoughts in a chat room. And then when the person is ready or done speaking and you're ready for your turn, you have the thoughts at hand. I think that's just largely how people interrupt. I mean, an example of that is I had a client yesterday. He was talking about audits, and I was discussing one audit and he didn't hear me. It was general liability audit, and the other one was workman's comp, and he just kept going on and on and on about workman's comp, and I just let him rant. And then at the very end I said, hey, I'm actually talking about your GL, not your workman's comp. And that just kind of calms the person down when they're doing their rant, and it allows them to say, oh, okay, well, maybe I should listen more. So it's kind of a two-way thing with conversations. When a person's going on and on like I am, I get it. Sometimes you kind of want to interrupt if you have these thoughts in your head, but also it's allowing a person space to be able to speak is something that gives them a safe space and safe thought, and it makes it valuable. It makes them feel like they're valuable in a group discussion. I'm done.
Jaswinder is next, but then I'd like to go and then we can welcome Tyra.
A lot of things come to mind here. If we're open-minded and we've come here to partake, learn, and participate, then there should be a free and easy exchange of information. I'm looking at things like iron manning, straw manning, deflection, denial. I didn't mean that. So there are lots and lots of interesting bits of protectionism, protecting what one has. Association, when one is speaking in full flow, out of half a dozen points or even out of 2 or 3 points, if there is one association which is poisonous, detrimental, and you want somebody else to wait till you've made all your points to point that out, that to my mind is more of a conflict causing situation than to say, I'd like to stop you right there while it's fresh and clean and no denial can be put there. Okay, most of the accusations that we're putting here against others are the very ones we ourselves carry out first. And then we report them first, like a 7-year-old, he did it first. And if these points are taken on board, we're going to keep doing the same things again. So either we want to move forward, or we want to have the same conversations and change them one word at a time. Now, I don't know why I do know why these things keep happening. And they're going to keep happening, as I've just said. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue the same? Do you want to keep accusing the others of doing it? And you want to then start putting in rules to protect your own rules? That's not a free and easy conversation. And being nice to each other. When people have a rant, it means that they are not being heard or they've been trying and it's not getting anywhere. Even 7-year-olds, 3-year-olds do that. I'm complete.
Okay, I had noted that we'd like to welcome Tyra, and then I'd like to go, and then Alex has his finger up also. Tyra, welcome. How you feeling?
I don't feel good. So I don't know how long I'll last, but I'm okay. So I'm good. Happy to be here. Happy to see everybody. And are we in a word salad debate? Sorry, I'm late. Word salad debate. It's great.
I don't know that term, but we'll see. Hey,
Do you know that term, Kayla?
Yes. No, we're not. Thankfully.
Okay, good. Okay.
Sam's sharing the screen. And
Okay.
yeah, you missed my long rant.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Okay.
So
All right.
actually,
well, here I am. So hi to everyone. Hi.
Kayla, since you have the floor, or anyone else, I've recapped what we've done today so far for Heiner when he just joined us a few minutes ago. Would anyone like to recap for Tyra and see, and I would like to listen to see whether or not that recap resembles what I think I was trying to do today. Would anybody like to try that?
Would it be insane to ask Manny to give it a shot?
Manny, you willing?
Yeah, I can work. Again, I'm new, so I'm still trying to take in as much as I can and kind of understand what's going on here. So just recapping on her, I mean, just how people will interrupt. I tend to do that, but at the moment I gotta hold back as much as possible to kind of get a feel of everybody. But I don't like to interrupt. I want to just throw my point out there, negotiate or yeah, argue, see who's got the best point. But yeah, I think it's part of the process, but yeah, it should be quite limited and and of course regulated. Absolutely.
Thank you, Manny. Okay, Alex, you want to go, and then I want to see if anybody else wants to add any points that were also discussed so far. Alex?
Well, I want to talk about what Kyla and Tyra was mentioning as far as it relates to interruptions and this brick that we've created, this single brick, because an agreement that's not non-binding on anyone is just a way to cohesively connect the emerging intelligence, what do you call it, the conscious evolution of intelligence, and that's because that sort of thing is what inspires me, gives me hope when I can learn that these little techniques work and help us move forward. And what it does, it expands my horizons, it transforms my perceptions, it opens my mind, and it touches my heart. So it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile practicing that, for me at least. Over.
Thank you, Alex. Anybody else want to go before I go? Okay, I will go. Oh, Heiner, you are there. I can see you now. Would you like to go?
Yes, I'm here. I'm only in listening mode. Sorry, I have guests, but it's so important now. It's about listening and interrupting. What we do in our magic roundtables is that we invite even interruptions, but they have to be short. And an interruption in our mode of attention time, like 1 minute, is you interrupt, but you were killing the thought of the person presently speaking. So the big ghost of being fair, like the, how do you say, the time moderator, uh, takes this time of interruption to give it to you, so you can catch up again with the line of thought you had before, and maybe even getting more time as a present. I'm just trying to tell you it is so important that we come to the different modes and cultures. When I did this with South American people, they interrupt all the time and they are alive and we love that. But if I do it in a serious German conversation, then it's like an intrusion. It is like an assault. So anyway, you have to adopt to who is speaking and how to come to common sense and common understanding. Thank you.
Extremely, extremely good context. Thank you. So, Tyra, at the risk of boring you, but also to signal you to see whether or not this is a focus that you want, I'm going to take probably at least a minute to recap my version of what we've been doing to date. Okay. So hopefully this is a chance for everyone else to sort of hear me a second or third time. And I apologize in advance if that's too repetitive. Okay. But let me share my screen because I think I've been taking notes on screen today. And I just want to warn you, I'm about to share my screen. I'll only do this for about a minute or two, okay? Okay, so I'm about to share this, and this is a little bit of recap of history. So I said, basically, here's my premise. We've had 3 years of conversation. It's taken a lot of time. We've lived through a lot of misunderstandings, some disagreements. They've kind of been undesirable events, but we've been trying to figure out how do we get the most out of each other even though we still experience all of this. We've had distractions, but we've had, those of us that are still here, the curiosity, the generosity, and dare I say, commitment to really work through all of this. And what I think we've achieved in the last several months is an appreciation for language, for listening, for focus, and for clarity. There may be more, but at least those elements. And that has been a reasonable foundation for us to come up with this very first thing that I'm calling the agreement RFC, the agreement how to, or the request for comment. And we discussed that the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's been reviewed, and I actually showed a version of it earlier. But if we say, geez, all this work has allowed us to come to, or at least close to, having this first brick, then my question at the start of the hour, Tyra, was if you look here in the upper right, we have this block called how do we understand and manage conflict? Okay, we have a brick, but we want to go towards this Valhalla or Nirvana or Satori state where we can understand how to manage conflict. I don't necessarily mean eliminate it, but manage it so that it's optimal. It creates the optimal outcome. So what I asked was, what is this path? How can we get there? If we have one brick, how do we start from that one brick and get to this bigger thing that we're able to create, whether it's a playground or a town square or a magnificent fountain or a cathedral, whatever you want to think about it as, this future state. And while having this discussion, as you arrived, we were in the upper left here talking about what context this is, because I was very cognizant that other proposals exist already. There are a lot of mechanics and proposals around how we manage conflict. Nonviolent communication is one. Crucial conversations is another. Therapy is another. Marriage, and divorce is another. Wars is another. Negotiations is another. Treaties is another. Contracts is another. Et cetera, et cetera. The legal system is one, right? But they all presume things which exist what we may not want to just assume for our new world. So what I'm trying to figure out is, can we have the conversation so we can very clearly, as we take every step, understand what we explicitly assume and build into our conduct and our behavior and our agreements. And that's what I've been trying to understand and identify these context items to the upper left, that we're acting as independent individuals with agency, with a willingness to collaborate and co-create, that we really want to understand our behavior and cultures, as Heiner just talked about, and with the skills of active listening and accommodating the limitations of this channel. If we were working in real life, we'd have different capabilities and different limitations than we do working through Zoom. And if we were communicating via Zulip or Facebook Messenger, there'd be another whole set of different limitations there. So learning how to deal with the limitations as we understand our culture and practices is really key, okay? And then whether or not we want to be rude, whether or not we want to be polite, all of those points that Jaswinder brings up. So that led to this cluster of ideas in the lower right here, which are things that we could potentially create as new bricks. Hand signals, a couple people have mentioned that. Raised fingers as a hand signal. And by the way, I raised a note saying, my raised finger semantic is, hey, I would just like to be the next to speak and contribute to this point. And other people kind of say, hey, this is a interruption signal. I don't necessarily take it as an interruption. In fact, it's a way to prevent interruption signal, but that's still yet to be discussed. How we recognize behaviors that are undesirable. What is that? Oh, that's my phone. Sorry about that. And Kayla brought up an excellent point. I wish people would really think about this very carefully, that before you speak, harness your thoughts. If necessary, write notes to yourself or give yourself some way to understand the theme or topic that you're responding to, so that you be very focused and concise and direct to that point. Okay. So anyway, that was the context of the conversation before you arrived, Tyra. And so we've had this, I think, for me at least, it's a very illuminating conversation about potential next topics. Look at the stuff on the lower right. It's all the stuff that we potentially could build as next bricks as we get towards a step of understanding how to manage conflict. So sorry to bore you, but that's my recap of what we've been discussing to date. Over.
I'd like to reiterate my point and also what Heiner was saying about the type of people that you're talking to in the context. So I'm not necessarily looking at this board as just the GCC conversation, but conversation in general. So GCC would be one example where more things would apply than others. For example, sometimes you'd like to collect your thoughts and ask questions, and sometimes you're just completely lost in what the person's saying, which shouldn't really happen. So that happens here where there's a great diversity of people, and to get people on the same page and respect time, I think I'll just won't belabor that point anymore to try to fall in suit of not talking more than a minute if not necessary. But yeah, the context and the people in the room, the proposal at hand. And I guess I would finish by saying, yeah, I'd like to concentrate more on the proposal inbox, and perhaps it would be nice if we spent a portion of the show going over proposals. And then some of the lighter banter that we have that's more general would be outside the songbird's words. Like we can use proposal time to sing the songs that Heiner's talking about. So, you know, if you want to flim flam and just shoot the shit in the town square, that's one thing. But if you actually have a proposal, I think we should focus on that and barn raising. And, you know, proposal for people to be heard, I guess is one. Because, you know, there's a stack of proposals. And so, you know, when I look at that list of gray boxes on the mind map, I can see different ways in different contexts, things would be more necessary or more of a problem than in other contexts. So we might just want to put the GCC example of conversation as opposed to what Heiner would do with the roundtables, or, you know, how we tried to focus on different ways of moderating. I think we were getting there because there's a lot of different conversations to be had. So, you know, debate is definitely a last straw of a certain type of exhibition, but it can be popular in some ways. But I think this group shies away from it, for example. Anyway, I'll end with that.
Okay, so I don't see any other hands. I'll go. Alex, you just raised yours, so can you go after me? Okay.
Yep.
Let me set another part of this context, okay? It's probably apparent that much of the reason for why I presented this brick idea is to invite what other bricks, other RFCs could be adopted and how we might spread this practice. Okay, right now, I'd have to say, I am very, very happy that people are considering this brick, this agreement RFC, and not really contending with it or objecting to it too much. I do note for the record that Glenn had some feedback, but I'll have to study that. It didn't look like a lot of objections, but I haven't actually fully read it yet. So I'm not ready to say, hey, we're adopting this, because Glenn actually had some feedback that I didn't get the notification for, okay? But let's think about what would happen if that agreement RFC actually settles for those end days, okay? Then what might we want to talk about? So Kayla raised, for example, this idea of the raised finger, or maybe everybody else here has already kind of been using it, okay? I would like to say a raised finger for me, and I'm repeating myself, is just, hey, I'd like to speak. I have a thought on what was just said. I'd like to be somewhere next in the queue to speak. I don't necessarily use a raised finger to say, oh, I want to interrupt you right now. Because if I wanted to interrupt you, I would just blurt that out right now. That would be an actual interruption. So I would say that this raised finger is a protocol practice for deferring the actual violent act of interrupting and placing yourself in the queue, hopefully to be noted by the moderator so that, you know, your turn comes up. That's what I consider when I actually raise my finger. I'm just curious what other people think about raised fingers. I see a raised thumb. Raised thumb has a different meaning also. Yeah.
You've said what I was going to say, so I'll pass.
Thank you, Alex. So if that is the case, and I don't see any other hands up, okay, I would invite someone to write up a TLDR version of a raised finger practice. I would actually be willing to do it, but I'm really trying to see whether or not other people are willing to adopt this practice of writing up an RFC, really, really short, sending it around and let people comment on it and add value to it. Otherwise, it's just me practicing my own thing, so I might as well just be playing with my own mental blocks. It doesn't have to be the raised finger either. It could be other hand signals. It could be, how do we deal with triggers? It could be, how do we pay attention during conversation? It could be, how do we handle our own misunderstandings based on language. If I hear a term that's not been used before, what do I do if I've not understood the definition? Straw man might be one, strong man might be another, steel man might be another, you know. It took me months to understand what those things were.
Sorry for the confusion, Sam. In my studies, straw manning is a very common term, and steel man is just the opposite of it. So you understand what a straw man is, then you automatically kind of get what a steel man is.
It's interesting because I've also been in a context that has used the word straw man a lot in a very different definition, just so you know.
Well, what's your definition of straw man? That would be interesting.
It's like a very first rough cut at something. You know, I've heard it used in that particular context. Let me throw up the straw man proposal, which is basically something that barely stands on its own, but you know, it's something people can look at and comment on.
I call that a draft or a proposal. Well, you know, yeah,
Sure,
I can
but
understand.
Everybody has a different context, right?
Yeah, that's not straw man in the same domain. That's a different
But
domain.
Can we say that's not that? Can we just say, hey, I recognize that you've got your domain with that definition. Let's recognize there's another domain with a different definition. Can they not coexist? As opposed to just saying, no, you're wrong.
No, they certainly can. And in fact, that's the context that we're talking about. So when it applies to a person in a conversation, it's different than when it applies to something else. It's when.
Yeah. So
when
they call it.
Yeah. That's
I'm interrupting now.
That's very important. Yeah.
I am interrupting now. I just mentioned that as an example. I didn't necessarily mention that just so we can go into.
No. I think it's a good example.
All right.
And Alex, you know, there's other terms. And I was just going to say that I think I have a post where I've already started to suss that out with you as far as terms to different things. And the hand signals, I've been working on that a little while. So Jazz has got some hand signals, and you know, so we could put together start of a proposal. If we understand the terminology, then we'll understand it together, because you know that's a language, right? It's a new language. It's like CB codes anyway. In a way, they can be very effective. That's right. Over.
Hey, by the way, I just put up another block. I'm not sharing the screen right now, I understand, but I just put up another block, which is you've got your proposal for what you just described. I've got one now. Maybe Kayla's got another one for raised fingers. Maybe Alex has another one. But if we each put ours in our own spot, which is perfect, by the way, for now, okay? Then how do we make sense of that so that when someone like Manny comes in, he can say, oh, we've got this group of 3 agreements, or hopefully somebody later on in a few months says, hey, we've already got like 40 different agreements and here's where you can find them, as opposed to having them be scattered willy-nilly. Okay. So anyway, that to me is another proposal, which is where do we put these things? Okay, over. Alex, you're next, and then Jaswinder.
In the guidelines, there's some tremendous guidelines available in various groups around the internet. So I met a straw man on the Yellow Brick Road, and the Tin Man, and the one with no heart, the lion.
So you're talking about a different context, right?
Yeah, it is, because that straw man different.
Right.
But most people are familiar with that straw man and not familiar with the one in the other context.
Right. So that's another. Okay, Jazz, you want to go?
In the 70s and 80s, we had the plain English movement all over. Whatever happened to that plain, simple English? Cut down on the idioms, cut down on the big words. Let's have plain, simple English. Not difficult. You can have it.
I personally, I never was aware of that particular movement. Second thought, I actually think language evolves over time. Language evolves with usage, right? So just look at Shakespearean English. You know, it's very different than what we use today. So I think it's valid to understand that language evolves, and to say, hey, let's go back to the language that we used in the 70s may not properly accommodate all the advances in thought either philosophy or technology or psychology
Point
or
here
everything.
is just plain, simple English.
Yes, but what's plain and simple to you
Current
is plain and
plain,
simple to
simple
someone else,
English.
right? That's the
And
point
not
I'm
to
making.
conflate with
You
things like
interrupted me, so I'm just going to interrupt you
field
back.
man.
But that's how this is going to indicate that this is not a very productive way to communicate.
It's a very productive way.
No, it's not. Because what you're saying is let's live with language from the 70s. And I'm saying
No,
let's recognize
that's
that
what I'm
language
not
evolved.
saying.
And you're not letting me
Plain
finish the
English.
statement. And so I feel very rudely interrupted right now.
That's your feeling.
Yes.
Plain English is
And
what
what
I'm
would
saying.
everyone else be thinking or watching this think if they say, hey, Jaswinder doesn't want to let Sam finish his thought? What would that say?
That says to me that we're all making the same mistakes again, already.
Are you making the same mistake again?
Absolutely.
So why do it?
Because it's to clarify a point.
Why do you not let me clarify?
Because you started off and went off on a tangent.
It's not a
English from the
tangent.
70s.
It's just different than the one that you have in your mind. And that's the lack of generosity to understand that I'm talking about. You were not generous enough to let me
I'm
speak,
saying
and you
was
interrupted me again.
we should use plain English. And by
Was
the
I
way,
not using
my
plain
hand
English?
was up a long time
No, I'm just
before
illustrating the point here.
I was
I'm
passed
just carrying
over.
this on to illustrate a point. Have I used confusing language? Have I used confusing language in the last 2 or 3 minutes? This has been plain English, Jaswinder. The most fancy word I used, I think, was the word evolve.
I think I came in
Okay, so I'm going to shut up
with my
now and let
hand
everybody
up
else whose
when
fingers
we were talking
were raised
about
contribute. So I think I saw
Steelman
Tyra
and Strawman.
and Kayla and Heiner in
Thank
whatever order you guys decide. Okay, I will shut up now.
I was just putting a timeout signal. That's all. Heiner?
Yes. Tina, I saw your, so it's very good to have such languages, like you're repeating yourself. I'm getting tired. But let me start with a positive note. I think we have made some progress the last 3 years here in GCC. The interruptions were much more, they were much more worse. And the awareness of time you take and steal has made some progress. So I think we are on a steep learning journey to what civilized dialogue is. And that a lady wrote 25 years ago. We have to do that. And in physical environments, it's already difficult. But in this virtual, it is really, really difficult. Regarding terms and jargon, simple language. This simple language discussion in media is going on for decades. You cannot be so simple that it really reaches all and at the same time go to understanding and to really contact. So the approach to cacophony, everybody talking about the same time, that's why we said an interruption is something where you get the rest of the attention span, like 5 minutes. So I feel very good here. That's why I'm here, even when I have visitors. But I must also say, it took me 3 years now with Colin that he read my 4 pages on sharing and gifting. And I talk many times on the laws and axioms on civilized dialogue, but then we only discussed, is it an axiom or is it a law? Or is it the experience of American Indians with talking sticks, having 60 talking sticks like from ice melting when you speak? Or how the Maori are going in with attention. So the 4 R's I mentioned, and I only will close. We had the American Indians and the Maori peace projects last Sunday in our Earth Odyssey meeting. And we have Lauren on tomorrow noon in the Earth Odyssey. And we speak about not artificial intelligence or collective meaning, but we speak about common sense and common understanding. And our sessions, our roundtables now is next Sunday, I mean, in 20 hours, is only women talk. So maybe let's see if they interrupt each other and with which intent they're interrupting. And is it ending up in a cacophony, or is it ended in a sense to come to shared understanding towards positive, peaceful goals? That's been again my rambling. Excuse me, bye.
And with that, I am complete.
Kayla, I think I saw your finger up also. And then Tyra wants to go again.
Yes, I like the timeout. So I'd like to propose we adopt the finger and the timeout. And I'm really sorry. I don't want to see that. To see two people arguing is just not good. I don't like to see my kids argue. I don't like to see politicians argue. You know, I get it with the 2 points, but once again, it's just I would like to think we're civilized enough, like Heiner said, and I'd like to think that we're elevated enough to be able to have discussions, in an intellectual manner. I get it with the whole simple is better and easier, and it probably invites a different or more people to come in and have discussions if you're not using a tremendous amount of words. But I also like to think that the basis of communication there should be really, respect and people listening and feeling safe to say what they want to say. And with that, I'm complete.
Tyra?
Yeah, well said, Kayla. When people argue, my immediate reaction is to run out of the room. It immediately makes me feel uneasy. And arguing is a reaction to something. So if there's an argument, it's a reaction. And so to me in these groups, for me to communicate is to not react. I mean, I can feel passionately about something. I can disagree and I can get really pissed off all in a flash. But how I react to it is where I try to bring in self-control. And I understand what Jazz is saying about simple language. And to me, what that says relates back to what Heiner was saying is having an understanding of the people that you're talking to. And it's not that you have to dumb down. It's just more a matter of understanding your audience. And also, I like a room where I hear language I've never heard before. I love language, and I feel like language is de-evolving and is losing its meaning, at least in American culture. So I like to learn new words, and I'm not ashamed to raise my hand and say, I don't know what that means. In fact, I take a lot of pleasure in it because it gives the other person an opportunity to teach me something, which is a gift. So I just want to touch on that simple language isn't dumbing down. It's, to me, more a matter of who's my audience. And, Joel is a good example of this for me. Manny, I don't know if you've met Joel yet. Joel's in the UK. And Joel knows his audience when he's speaking, because I feel like Joel operates on a really high intellectual frequency, but he's never made me feel less than. And I don't know, he has a great intuition with that. I think if Joel were to speak the way his mind really thinks, I don't know that I would understand any of it, but he knows me well enough to bring it to a level of understanding and educate me at the same time. So the timeout for me is you're arguing, and please take a break because it's making me want to leave the room. Just because that's me. I turn into a child, especially when I hear men arguing. It's a real like childhood trigger. Like, you know, when the men in my house argued, guns came out. I mean, that was my upbringing. So that's how uncomfortable it makes me. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you.
I really do want to stress that this group, at least this group, if not others in GCC, has seen many other women come and go. They've not stayed. Whatever behavior we think is reasonable is driving women away. And if we think interrupting is reasonable in the face of what Tyra just said, then we're our own worst enemy. We don't recognize that. Unless you believe that the world is just a place where men talk to other men. And I firmly do believe that, you know, we've seen the mistakes of that assumption. So we need to accommodate a sense of safety for people who do want to participate and not just think, oh, interruptions can just be had willy-nilly. No, it is a violent act. And for that not to be seen as a violent act is itself a repudiation of a sense of culture, a respect for others, a respect for others' safety. So I really, really want to echo what Tyra and Kayla are saying, because I know that enough women have come and left that I appreciate the fact that Kayla and Tyra keep coming back. I would hate for this, whatever we're doing, to drive away either of them or potentially both of them. Thank you. Over. Alex, your finger was up, and then Jazz, and then Manny.
Okay. This communication skill thing is being applied. I'm learning how to pull myself up if I find myself doing some of those tactics that were described as by other members as not leaning in, not helping, not being constructive, and being counterproductive. So it was part of how I show up and prioritizing those communication skills, because we want to attract more women to the group to make it more evenly balanced. That's part of the deal, I think. Implementing these skills that we've learned along the way and putting that into the agreement on your chart, you know, putting it as one of the items there. Communication skills applied, improved, and valued. Over.
Well, I don't know which level to tackle this one at. Firstly, the women who've left these groups, this particular group, I'm not sure how that's valid, because men have come and gone as well, and we didn't mention those. And lots of people have stayed, and some have just gone out all by themselves without giving any reason at all. Secondly, arguments, discussion, debate, they are different words with different levels of what I would generally call passion. Thirdly, it's an endemic the world over currently that people are arguing. Why is that? Who set this rule? I mean, if you go to a civil court, or if you go to a county court, or to a criminal court, or if you go into the Queen's chamber or Parliament, there are different settings. The people who rule us, I don't know about the United States, but certainly in the UK, we've had televised parliamentary debate for at least 15 years, if not 20 years now. And this thing you keep bringing up civilized. I don't know what that means. The most aggressive country in the world is not civilized. And what Tyra said is entirely true. They get heated up and pull their guns out because you're not allowing them to finish their argument verbally. I'm upset. I get het up. My heartbeat goes up. Yes, mine used to as well. I had to control it. So if those situations arise, you are denying me the ammunition to deal with those situations at that level. And you're also saying to other people, yeah, let's have lots of metaphors in our language. We like metaphors and built-up idioms that only a farmer uses or is obscure. I used to wonder in English poetry classes, what is the point of writing English that takes half an hour to explain one sentence? It may be colorful, it may be staccato, it may be rhyming, but it doesn't get the point across quickly. There are a lot of frustrated and misunderstood people because they don't have the language skills as pointed out by Tyra, and they want to talk plain, simple English as they know it. And they have a habit of interrupting each other. Are we smart enough to change? Are we curious enough to change? Are we, like, from my point of view, if somebody interrupted me and said, no, wasn't the 70s, I don't mean the 70s, I actually mean plain English. Thanks for the interruption. Thanks for the clarification. If I was pointing a gun at you and you got upset, yeah, I understand that. But an interruption is really, really rude. Is your level of rudeness so low? And I'm not the grown one then. I'm still the child. Actually, I have a lot more fun with the children because we don't have these silly rules. We just talk. I want that, that's mine. Yeah. Well, no, you pushed me. No, I didn't. We're not pulling out guns. We're not sending out aircraft carriers and saying, we want your oil. Otherwise, we're going to destroy your economy. Sanctions. Let's be different. Let's be plain. Let's be understood. Let's not deflect and waste a whole program because I have a point to make and I don't want anybody else to interrupt. Filibustering is a term that was built up in the United States. It's still going on the world over now. It's spreading viruses. But we don't want an interruption. I'm complete.
Heiner? And then Manny?
I think we are reaching something here. We really got more calm. We understand some people filibuster all their life. And we even step back and see, what is this here? Is this parliamentary circus? And I'm very much having to do with this staging, and all the interesting issues are only in the back chambers, or are we in a battle here? And that's why I want to show you one slide. This was done at the Sunday I just mentioned, where I mentioned the two women, where we come to the 4 R's of indigeneity. And if we could have the C's of relationship, responsibility, reciprocity, and distribution, we would be already somewhere. But then with the First Nations, some young guys from a Canadian First Nation tribe said, we need other thieves, because this redistribution we don't understand. But in modern internet, in cyber culture, we want respect and relevance. And this respect of relevance is what I cannot show. This is what I mentioned before with these two women, LaDonna Harris, chief of the North American tribes, always fighting against Washington, or LaDonna Harris, coming to the epistemological axiom. And I really invite you to look at that and maybe come tomorrow, because I think we really have to go to a new level. Over.
Thank you. Was it entire then, Manny?
What is epistemological mean? Heiner? And then I have more to say.
That's a good question. You see, I was teaching at Humboldt University, and my fighting professor said, what you all say is brain fucked. I don't understand you, but get out of the field of ontology. You may do epistemology, but ontology is my field. So it has to do what is and how we learn about it. But maybe Sam can explain much better. It is this scientific schools or scientific tribalism creating terms like weapons or walls around them to really protect themselves, because they cannot go into the deep and fight over the schools of philosophy or school of whatever. Sorry, we have not Carl with us today.
Okay, thank you for that.
Tyra?
I just want to finish up on that real quickly on my other thought, which is, I think that there's a real difference between interruption and arguing. And I did appreciate what you said, Jazz, that, you know, clearly there aren't any guns in this room. And that's true. And that's something I have to remind myself of, that just because I have that visceral reaction doesn't mean it's reality. It doesn't mean I'm in danger because these two men are arguing on Zoom. So that's a very good exercise for me. And it speaks to one of the reasons why I keep coming back to this room, is so that I can sit with men who are arguing and interrupting each other, and they don't end up, you know, stabbing each other in the end. So I'm glad you raised that point, Jazz, because I didn't realize that that's one of the reasons I keep coming back, is because I like seeing you guys figure it out. And but I do think there's a big distinction of violence between interruption and arguing. Arguing feels much more violent to me than interruption. I'm complete.
Manny, I think you were next, and then Jazz.
Should I let Jazz respond?
My response is quite simple. It's to do with the language, and Tyra there has used words in that little retort which are extremely, to use her word, violent. I tend to shy away from those. I don't even want to use the word argument. It's like disagreement is what I would say. An interruption, that's really upsetting. No. If you're going to carry those words in your particular vocabulary, or if I carry them, then I am violent, because I carry violent words in my vocabulary. I don't use the word problem, because that's inviting the problem. When you go into a shop, you don't use words you don't need to use. You use the words exactly what you mean. Half a pound of white sugar, pound of brown sugar, demerara sugar, quarter pound of, I don't know, whatever you want. Packet of Kellogg's cornflakes, crunchy nut cornflakes. We are exact. So in this shop, I don't see that. I see in this shop what's out there, what the media uses to conflate, to exaggerate, to get somebody's attention over a little item to sell newspapers. We're not in the sales business, are we? So why are we using these unnecessary words? And just to explain that problem thing, sometime long time ago, I don't know who it was, but that doesn't really matter. On the other side of each problem is an opportunity. It was Henry Ford, I believe, in the 1910s or 20s. Is an opportunity. So I go to the other side where the opportunity is. There's nothing wrong. The world is, we are all in a learning mode. If I were to compare the average mentality of the average worldwide person, I would say we're in our mid-teens. And we have allowed those who had degrees and higher qualifications the benefit of the doubt that they know what they're doing. It's only recently, since the advent of social media, that we've started talking with each other and saying to each other, they don't know what they're doing, do they? For the first time, we are able to talk to each other without the benefit of a middle person telling us, we don't know what we're talking about. We do know what we're talking about, and we do know what to do, but we're being kept out of the picture. We're being sidelined because the rich men want to and are getting richer. That program started in the 80s, in the Reagan era. He and Maggie Thatcher in the UK were the two prime leaders in the West who changed the policies in favor of tax reduction and giving money to the rich people to make more jobs. At the same time, jobs were going abroad. Today, America is not admitting that it's lost out to China because China is the world's production platform. Okay, I'm complete, I give way.
Okay, I wanted to note that I would like to go next, but Manny has been waiting, so it'll be Manny, myself, Heiner, and Alex. We've got a big stack of people going on.
Yes, a couple of points I just wanted to point out. History does show arguing or confrontation has been the way to do business until recently, perhaps 100 years or so. Although I'm a lover, not a fighter, I was a fighter for many years at a younger age. So I prefer a more calm environment, peace, of course, to keep my anxiety levels low, and for everybody else as well. I agree with bringing more women involved. I, as I mentioned, would like to eventually put a team around the world, which will include many women, as I believe they are here, as many girls say, to save the world, which is awesome. I just want to, although I also believe the Jazz has some great points, confrontation, rebuttals, points of views will never or not always be the same. But I was thinking, are we gonna have to do this as a debate where each gets a minute, time runs up, okay, somebody has a wooden stick or something to stop talking over each other? Is that something that you guys feel is needed? I think we've been doing pretty good so far after the little event we saw earlier. So just, again, I'm new, just trying to get some feedback, getting a feel of what's happening. I know we've gone to many guidelines and rules most of the day today. Wanted to see, ask what has been productive for the past 3 years. I mean, I have some very high quality people on here, and just want to get a feel of what has been done, any programs, any applications been created, any programs that are feeding people around the world. Have you guys created anything that has saved lives? Or what's in the future? I want to be able to generate good and eliminate pain and suffering, which means no arguing or I guess as little as possible, to reduce stress and eliminate stress, quite honestly, which I think we'll eventually get to someday, somehow. Um, so uh, just want to get some more feedback, and I guess just from the arguing point of things, it's needed, not necessarily needed. I think it was good in the past. It's no longer good. We're all civilized, and we could always, I guess, take that private maybe, so we don't freak other people out. Because I am, people do not agree with me when I know I'm correct or I've done the research to back it up. Um, but yet they're going against me, and I do get, defensive. That's normal. That's human. It's a normal reaction, um, which is part of being human, quite honestly. But it's an ugly reaction, and I think we are developed enough to try to avoid that against each other. Which again is the problem with planet Earth. Not everybody agrees with each other. So just wanted to throw that out there, my input. I had a lot more to say, but things come and go. But yeah, what do you guys think about my comments? Over.
So just a preface, just the nature of this, take turns kind of conversation means that it's not easy to have a linear conversation where each person only responds to the person who immediately preceded them, because we're all stacked up. Heiner's got a response to something that was said minutes ago. Alex has a response to something that was said minutes ago. I have something that was said a minute ago, okay? So I apologize in advance if I'm not directly responding to your point, okay? But I'm responding to an earlier point, which I think may indirectly have to do with your point, which is, imagine at level 0, let's imagine a world where we all love each other, we're all having dinner together, we have great conversation, we're just bouncing off each other's ideas, emphasizing that, hey, let's go do this tomorrow, whatever. Imagine that as, let's say, called situation 0, okay? Imagine situation 10, which is we're really deep in conflict. We're going to battle over this land. There's oil there, or there's food there. And, my armies are facing your armies, and we're about to go and cause thousands of deaths. Okay. So between 0 and 10, step back to level 9, which is perhaps we have somebody of influence that can say, rather than going to war, let's meet over a conference table, at least for an hour, and let's see if we can work something out. Okay. Backtrack to level 8, which is, hey, before I send my armies, let's send my ambassador. And let's see if we can work something else before we get the armies involved. Maybe let's step back and ratchet back to level 7, which is the president calls the prime minister before sending the ambassadors, and they have a phone call because everybody said, hey, we're about to have a conflict here. If we don't de-escalate this in 3 steps, we're going to go to war. Imagine at level 6, that instead of getting the president and the prime minister involved, we got the people in this industry talking to those people of that industry across different international boundaries, and they're working it out at their level. Imagine at level 5, we've got another set of people, which is, hey, I don't like the way you price things for me. I don't like the way you tax things for me. We've got, the supply line people talking to each other and working things out. Let's suppose back at level 3, and you sort of get the picture, right? So eventually you work yourselves back to, hey, we're just, loving each other, flow is happening, and everything's just hunky-dory. We never have to escalate. So my point is, if you can de-escalate from level 10 to level 9, yes, you've done something good. If you've de-escalated from level 9 to level 8, yes, you've done something good. However, de-escalating from level 10 to level 9 says you're still at this violent, point of conflict. And you're still even not really understanding the most basic things you've learned in kindergarten. But if you're able to then take all that back and just keep yourself at level 0 and sense, oh, that's a disagreement. Let me lean into that. Let me have a calm conversation. Let me actually go out and break bread, and let's go have some coffee or whatever, and keep it from 0 to 1 to 3 to 1 to 0 to 1 to 2. Then it never gets to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That is what I call being more, let's say, emotionally intelligent or civil. But just to say, oh, I'm going to argue because it prevents violence is a very simplified notion of what it means to de-escalate from violence. You can keep violence from happening by staying always at level 9, but you're always going to have this tension. You're going to always have this resentment. You're always going to have this potential to escalate to 10. I'd rather be in a civilization where we learn to live at 0, 1, or 2, etc. Okay, and never have it go beyond 4 or 5. Now, I understand this is a hypothetical range, but I hope you get the point. The point is, the more you have violence, the more you eliminate or diminish security, the more likely people feel that they have to escalate their response. And that is what I mean by saying, let's have civil discourse. It's not simply just that we have prevented war or we prevented fisticuffs. That's a very simplified notion. I think that there's a much more nuanced way of understanding what civilization has been able to accomplish, and that this is one of the ways I would like to present our practices and how we evolve our practices, at least here. If we can't do it here, we have no business doing it anywhere else. And if we think just eliminating violence between us, just by not coming to fisticuffs is enough, we got a long ways to go. Over. I think there were Heiner and Alex and maybe even Colin now stacked up.
Yes, I think it is very important because there are so faint differences. I had to learn a lot between civil and civic. And the terms you use in America or in England, like visceral, I'm very happy that I know it, but it's very, very difficult for people to follow, especially when we talk so fast. So we have to come to some decency, and I'm going back to the epistemological laws of LaDonna Harris. It is the work of 50, 60 years of peacemaking, and it has to do with reciprocity, with scarcity, parsimony. All these people were trying to make sure that complexity is reduced and that the context is involved. Otherwise, they wouldn't have survived. So I will leave it with that. And I announce this PowerPoints, but I will send it in the chat space. Over.
Thanks, Heiner. I think Alex was next.
Yeah, I've got an impression that the bots on the internet, the artificial intelligence that's looking at everybody's posts, looking at keywords, it understands us better than we understand ourselves. It's like we don't have to have an election. This thing can work out our preferences by itself. So if we're not in the loop, if we're all in a micro group and we don't need to take a vote because we can just send this bot around to check out all the metadata, and it'll know how many people have been using a particular word, what their opinions are, what movies they watched, who they liked, who they clicked on. That sort of artificial intelligence is not very accurate, but it's improving. And that gives us an ability to have that voting, removes the need to have voting and removes the need to have elections. The validation can exist if it's working and it's approved, it can be continued and worked on. It's evolving, so it will always continue improving. It might be childish and immature at the moment, but boy, you only have to have a doubling of the processor power and suddenly it's taking over.
Manny, did you have your finger up? Okay. Poland then.
Yeah, so I think sticking to one point at a time is what will work best for me in this forum, especially if we're not using any memory tools or joint tools or any, we don't already have microagreements to be following along some particular initiative or idea. So I like the idea that proposals are coming, RFCs, Sam's asked for some. So I've waded into looking at starting some hand signals. I think maybe we need to shepherd a common space. I think that's where, you know, everybody thinking in an agilistic way could help this along. I don't know if that's a stretch, Sam, but we started down that road. Whether we, but some common way that if we're going to make an agreement, we actually know it's there. So a new member could come to that RFC and say, no, I don't think this is right. If I can't argue my points, I like that tactic. So I'm going to disagree and say I should be able to argue and use argumentation as a tool to express my passion and get my point across. Like I've been in conversations where people speak louder because they think I can't hear them, or they think if they speak louder, I'm going to understand them better, and that's just ridiculous.
Or slower.
Or I don't know, but I think if we do come across these things, these triggers as we call them, I don't necessarily want to dismiss them out of hand, but reschedule them and put another container around them. Maybe you do want to put an argumentative container on it, but do we want to do it here in the barn room floor? Well, that would be another agreement. Yeah, let's have an argument and let's make all the people feel tense, and or let's rethink this, what our points are, and see if we can't discuss this in a more mature civil manner. That's all I've been after. So I'm to the point where I'd like to make a proposal for an agreement where we don't honor the type of interruptions that are actually blocking. And I like the fact that Tyra made a distinction between argument and interruption, because I think that's another indicator. They say there's some laws that they have, I don't know, they're sexual laws of some sort, and they're not well defined, but they say we'll know it when we see it. We're kind of in that realm. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about, but when they're trying to, anyway, the consensus of what we don't like for behaviors is what I'm trying to say. So if we see certain behaviors like, okay, well, that was interruption, but that was interruption that was angry. So that we don't want. So there's a distinction to be made. And maybe there's a whole bunch of conversation that somebody who does like to use anger tactics or argumentation could schedule and see if people want to come and participate. Or, you know, because I think by default, we don't want to have them here. So if it's necessary to use those tactics, is there a way we can make a venue where that can live, to not discriminate against people, but to not let them violate the core rules or behavioral suggestions of the group, where if somebody starts to get blocking and argumentative, like you and Jazz were doing to each other, and you and Josh did earlier, and you're not a bad offender, Sam, but you are an offender, because the escalation does happen. So if we could just agree not to escalate because we got a better thing, I don't think the escalations would be necessary, because we've enhanced our conversation tools. We're using better tools now. And if you want an argument, take it outside. Please bring back your results. We're very interested, because apparently it's got to be awfully important, right? You're willing to argue about it. You're willing to distract everybody. So maybe you're willing to handle it better. That's what I think. It's just trying to cheapen the conversation by trying to force it through anger and emotions, when maybe there's something to be learned by these new words. I don't want to be told how to speak or what your words I should use, although I don't mind people saying that your attitude's a little out of line and you could probably speak better. But I don't want to be told what words I can use, and if I'm confusing and people, then maybe I should do better to define those things. And I think Sam and I are on that little bit of that path, because I do think there's some wisdom behind, is GCC a show or not? And what Jazz says, you know, don't invite the problem. Well, the problem sometimes invites itself, but how do we know which side of the fence we're on? That's the question. And I'll yield. Thank you.
Jazz and then me.
Thank you, Colin. Earlier, you made the same comments in chat about me. And now you're telling me and everybody else, we can't do those things.
I didn't say that. I like to argue once in a while, but it's got to be the right place, the right time. That's what I'm saying.
So you can decide that, but I can't.
No, we can decide it. And we're also in a group. So we don't have, just between you and me doesn't mean we can go at it. It's not fair.
I see. So I'm really, really confused now. So I can't tell people what language they can or can't use, or when, where they can't or can use, but you can. You're mute.
Sorry, no, what I'm
Somebody
saying is I don't want rules to say that we can't censor certain words except for maybe some
You're
plastic
using words like censor, angry, pointing them at me, whereas
No.
I'm saying let's drop them.
I'm not making rules. I'm saying together we can make a proposal. That's what I'm saying. And what would we like on that proposal?
I didn't
Thank you.
hear the word proposal. That's exactly what I'm getting at. And
Great.
now we've got 2 timeouts because they don't want a tit for tat conversation. But it's not clear. I'm complete.
Yeah, well, you can ask people if they want clarification. That's what I'm saying.
Kayla, why don't you go?
I just want to point out that it's a lot more difficult to grow something than it is to destroy it. I would have to say that, like, I really admire people like Tyra who can plant things and make them grow, because it's really easy for me to kill plants. And there's something about building and making things real cute. Like right now, I'm trying to make my house festive, but I'm better at cleaning up. So I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that in there. A lot of people are more attracted to dissonance because it's easier, and it's really difficult to come together cohesively, you know. And yeah, I'm complete. Oh, plus I wanted to say something that Tyra had said. She said that she wanted to apologize, that she didn't mean to disappear just like that. And she said that she's kind of achy and she's got some sort of a flare up.
Can I mention
is it my
that
turn?
something gross?
I was trying to go.
Yeah, were you watching the screen? A tree grows, the tree grows. You just put the seed in the ground, and the tree grows, and then you chop it. To destroy that tree, you've got to use a lot of effort to chop it down. But it doesn't take any effort to grow.
It took thousands of years to grow.
It's effort. It grew effortlessly. It's nature. I mean, if you can make a mess, you can introduce chaos, and it's a lot harder to get order. But that's when you make a mess and you have to clean the house up. That's a different situation, I think. Over.
It goes to mental models. Depends on how you model it. It took a little effort for me to throw that seed on the ground, but it took millions of years for that DNA to actually compose itself in the right way. So it's all a different perspective. If it's a me-centric perspective, yeah, I didn't have to do shit. Let me say again also, this point that Tyra raised a long time ago, and I do understand she's not here anymore, about the word epistemology, gets to the point of selection of words, language, diction, etc. Because for me, epistemology, when I took philosophy, it was about the theory of truth. It was about the theory of knowledge. And I read that little blurb in Heiner's document, and it was related, but not exactly that. The epistemological axiom seemed like it was indicating some richness that was not in my existent version of epistemology. So that's an opportunity for me to learn. It's not a problem, it's an opportunity. Okay. Let me refer back to the moment where I felt interrupted by Jess Winder. Jess Winder had just got done making a point about simple English or simple language. I was trying to make a point about how language evolves, and I felt that I was not being heard because I was interrupted in the middle of making that statement. So I was trying to add to the conversation by bringing a perspective that I don't understand what simple language is. What's simple to you may not be simple to me. What's simple to me may not be simple to you. So let's first understand what simple means if we're going to actually recommend it as a practice. And I was trying to indicate how my understanding of language didn't include that notion of simplicity. And oh, by the way, it's very valuable to see that language evolves over time. That was the point I was trying to make, but I didn't feel like I had an opportunity to make it because just when there was not interested in hearing me, he just wanted to interrupt me and make a different point. So that to me is not one of those three constructive forms of interruption, in my opinion, is one of those blocking forms of interruption, which is a step towards the violence that I think, I was trying to depict in this scale from love to war. Over.
Again, the use of the word violence. Don't use words like that with children. Why use them here?
I told you exactly why. Okay, it is getting to the top of the hour. I know we've covered a lot of ground. It's probably not possible to resolve anything at the point, but anybody want to do an optional checkout?
Yeah, I would like to do a checkout about, I think, proposals that I think could help that I would like to have other people consider. I just don't want to write them and then expect everybody's going to do what I say because I wrote a paper, the Great White Paper. And I think the main thing that I would like to put forward, there's so many, I guess, is that we find a way to find some common agreements where we recognize that there's a diverse conversation going on here and we need to be able to navigate it a little better. So people who are interested in the conversation are taking part. I don't know, maybe the assumption is everything everybody says here is of interest to everybody, but I really like the idea Heiner's pitching with the gifting of time to people who are saying things and people having their main point that they want to follow, their main GCC purpose, if you could put it that way. And if it's just for company and companionship and understanding in general, then, that's okay. But if someone's trying to be highlighted in a certain way where they're trying to achieve something, like, Heiner is trying to do conferences with roundtables, we should, I guess what I'm trying to say, wouldn't it be nice if we could take a portion of the GCC barn raising and just go over our proposals, because that's really focuses on why somebody's here and how we can help them. And then if they take interest and they have influence, then
Interruption,
maybe,
that's what I'm trying to do, yes.
so if my proposal, can we set some time aside to just go over people's proposals and shelter them, harbor them, and be a shepherd to put them in a Google Doc that Sam can share with everybody, or Sam could, say, Kayla, it's your week, you're doing the newsletter and the proposal board, and we can hand that chore around. But it seems to be something that would be a way to do a barn raising task of collecting nails or lumber or something. Managing our time wisely to focus a large part of our efforts on proposals and seeing them through. Proposals that are for the group and proposals that are for an individual that would like to bring something to the group. I think that's a distinction.
Okay. Jaswinder, Kyla, and Alex.
Tyler, all yours.
Okay, thank you guys. First of all, I'd like to say I heard everything that Manny said while I was decorating, and it was great. So I just wanted to say I like what you said. Second, I really do appreciate everything, the arguing, everything. What I'm hoping is that you can reflect on your behavior and not, just everyone in general, and see, just reflect on the inside and, I don't know, do a little bit of internal meditation. And the only reason why I say that is because I have heard that some women have left because of the arguing that's been here. But I'm here because I really appreciate everybody here and all of their contributions. So with that, I do have to go. I've got to be a mom, and I've got a full day. And it's great to see you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow.
I'll check out with this thought about unity. Unity is not overrated, but compatibility is overrated, because even though we do need some compatibility, unity is more important, I think. And that gives me the impetus to put that in the proposal, even leave it hanging around while we make proposals. The idea that it's important to be united as a group, but the compatibility factor is an issue, because what makes us different also makes us strong. We have this diversity over.
Well, here we are again. 3 checkouts, 3 different modes of checkouts, doing exactly what they don't want others to do and telling others what to do.
I object.
You object. You want to elaborate on that?
No, because there's a round of checkouts. But it was a very rude objection because I strongly disagree with you. But we don't have the agreements yet, so I feel allowed to do this.
Well, Colin went into his managerial mode again. That's not a checkout.
That's what I call a checkout.
See? Change already. I'm complete.
I don't think we have to worry about change. We have to worry about alignment.
Now we're ping-ponging again.
Well, that's what the after show's for. Sorry.
We should have a different word for the checkout.
All right, let me do a checkout then, okay? I'm going to briefly, just for the record, share my diagram again, just so you can see that I've been trying to capture a few items that I've been hearing in the conversation. Not everything, because I'm not that able to do it all, but this, you can see, has a number of other elements that have been brought up in the course of conversation. I don't want to draw any conclusions. I'm just trying to put on here the cacophony idea, the women gone idea, the timeout idea, confusion and loss of context, reaction to triggers, problems as opportunities, shared group memory, common sense, understanding others, and a few others like filibustering, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know exactly when I showed this previously. Emotional intelligence, intellectual, experts and expertise. I added those, simple English, rudeness, politeness. I just wanted to show you that those are now, at least on this map, for possible follow-up later. And I will leave that as my checkout. Thank you all.
Can you add arguments to the interruptions?
Okay, I will do so.
Like,
Can
I
you
think
add-
there's a distinction
Can you
there.
add syntax? Syntax to the discussion.
Did you say syntax?
Yeah, it's used. It's used in programming languages a lot.
Yeah, I don't understand the context or relevance in this conversation for syntax, though.
For hand signaling, syntax for hand signalings. Yeah, that's all.
So we did have the raised finger and a timeout that were in the lower right, just FYI.
Yeah. So then people understand when they see somebody using the signals, they understand them. And
Well,
don't
like I say,
misinterpret.
I invited people to write up a RFC for that. So you're free, or anyone is free to write that up.
Okay.
And with that, I think I will recede into the walls here. Thank you all. Manny?
Thank you all for having me once again. I just want to say thanks for the knowledge input. As one of you said, we all have different minds, and our differences do make us better. So we got to be careful. As Elon just said recently, told the U.S. to get out of the way of entrepreneurship, or one of those. But so we don't want to block these great ideas, but we also got to do it in a nice, calm way, if that's possible, which I know it is. But yeah, that was it. Oh, by the way, I hate oil, and Henry Ford, I know he didn't know it at the time, but he almost killed us. Can't stand the guy. That goes for JP Morgan Chase too. I only say that because Nikola Tesla had the technologies 100 years ago that we're barely starting to use now, which is pretty disappointing. So yeah, they're on my naughty list. Unfortunately, I know many people love these people, but trust me, they're no good. With that, I'm out. Thanks so much.
You know, but the banking behind the February 2013 so-called banking, what do I call it? Conspiracy theory.
Financial deregulation.
Yeah. JP Morgan's deeply involved there too.
You guys have a great weekend. See ya.
Okay. Shall we call it a day? Okay. Thanks all. Bye for now.